Hey fellow patriots, Bravo Echo here, and I wanted to give you kind of an update on the continuance of box gardening. Some call raised bed, but mine's not quite as high as a total raised bed box. It's basically boxes, three 16-foot boxes, 4 feet wide. Anyway, and it's I had shared previously in a newsletter, we put matting underneath and then covered in some cut wood, trees about 5 years old, and they were decomposing, and then covered in mulch and mushroom compost and then dirt. So give you a little update. Some folks had asked questions about what type fencing, and as you can see, posts that are spread out, and you may or may not be able to see the instead of using a wire fence, I used what's called deer netting. You may be able to see it here, but it's when you buy it, it's 100 feet long and 14 feet, I believe, in height. So I basically left 2 to 3 feet on the bottom and 2 to 3 feet on the top, and then covered my post and stretched it around. Knock on wood, but so far it has kept the deer out. I've learned that when the deer, when their spout or snort touches against the fence, it's kind of rough and it gives a little bit, and then the extra at the top I hung over towards the outside, so if they hit against that and it moves, they back away. So knock on wood, we have not had a deer problem. The problem we did have was even with the bottom staked down about every 2 to 3 feet, squirrels, raccoons, and groundhogs were going to the bottom and pulling the stakes up. So I went and got wood, and I ran wood all the way around the border up next to the fencing and staked it off, and knock on wood, to this point it has kept the extra critters out. In addition, we have set a trap, and we did catch one groundhog so far. So on to the gardening part. Things have started out slow this year here in East Tennessee. We have pulled off probably 50 plus tomatoes of different sizes, cherry tomatoes, full-size tomatoes, salsa tomatoes, or tomatoes for salsa. We just ran a dehydrator load yesterday of tomatoes and peppers, and pulling cucumbers out. I did run a load of pickling 7 pints of cucumbers for dills. So we'll see how they turned out. One of the lessons I learned this year in garden planning and placement, as you can see here, these are spaghetti squash, the smooth squash, and zucchini. And I placed 2 spaghetti squash, originally 4. 2 of them developed, 2 of them died. And for probably the first month, the spaghetti squash stayed at about 2 inches tall. Then after about a month, as you can see, in the last few weeks, I've actually had to cut these back. They have grown in excess of 7 to 8 feet tall. But I do have spaghetti squash formed. One of the nice things in the last 2 weeks we've noticed, we've had an abundance of bees in the garden. So as the plants are flowering, the pollination need is taking place. So one of the lessons learned is next year either spread the squashes out, give them an abundance of room. I have racks in there to help them grow upward, to spread them out, but they've gone crazy in the last 2 to 3 weeks. So we do have zucchini squash, spaghetti squash, all formed. You might be able to see a baby spaghetti squash laying right there, and there's a whole bunch hanging inside. The same was with cucumber plants. For the first month they looked kind of yellow, and just like with the squash, the cucumbers, and some of the tomato plants that started out really rough. We collect coffee grounds and or use eggs and take the shells and crush them into the grounds, and I bring them into the garden. And when I brought the first batch out and started spreading them around the plants, about 4 days to a week later, I started seeing a health change in how the plants looked. So I basically circled each plant about 6 inches out from the roots, and just kind of took a small hand shovel and cycled the grounds and eggshells into the dirt. So that helped a great deal so far. Green peppers, we're still, for some reason, this is the 3rd year in a row, green peppers, just for whatever reason, they do not seem to want to grow. More so, it seems the jalapenos and the yellow and greenhorn and bell peppers, we get much better production if we time it and have them where they're ready to bloom in the September, early October time range for some reason. So let's take a walk into the garden. So using the deer netting, of course had to have a gate, so I basically put 2 posts about 36 inches apart, and then cut a separate piece of the deer netting and attach to the right post, and then I connect it to the left post and use a tie to go over the top of the post, and then hook it into the little spikes on the left post. And that's how I go in and out. If you're interested in setting yours up, you can see here the squash went absolutely crazy. You can see some of the spaghetti squash blooming, and again I have cut these back, and the plants are so heavy, the racks that they're on, they kind of control the racks. And in the raised boxes, especially with the wood in the bottom underneath your compost, dirt and mulch, one of the things you got to be kind of cognizant of is when you use racks of any kind, you can only push them down so far, and because the wood may get in your way. Here's another lesson learned here. A neighbor had some starter plants with melons and cantaloupes. There's 4 planted in this area right here, and you can see how they've just gone nuts. Again, it took them about a month to take off, and then once they did, you can see all the flowering and the bees that's going on. So you may be wondering, what's the blue hoops in here? So one of the things I tried to counter if squirrels or any of the animals got beyond the fence. My first run of green beans, before I put the blue hoops up, my first run of green beans was about 6 to 8 inches tall back in early to mid-June anyway, and I came out one morning and they were wiped out. So I went and bought some of this flex tubing, It's about $40 per 100 feet. I only needed 100 feet, and I got 9, which is what I needed, 9 cut into 10-foot sections. And I put them into the holes of my cement blocks. It was already in the blocks when I got them. So I have 3 hoops. These are the beets, the carrots. I've already pulled up a couple of beets, but beets, carrots, and green beans. These are green beans. They're about 3 weeks old in the ground, and some marigolds, of course, down at the end. But I put the hoops in, and then I took more of the netting. This is actually bird netting, and I draped the bird netting across my hoops, and then they're tied down inside the boxes. They're divided in the center to separate the green beans from the beets, and so far, knock on wood, I've had no problems with birds or any 4-legged varmints getting in. You probably wonder, what are the water bottles? It's basically little 2-3 foot bamboo sticks that I had, and I broke them off and I put them along the border, took empty soda or water bottles, put them over it, and that helps hold the netting back off of the plants as they grow. So again, it took a little bit of an investment, but in order to have what I'm trying to grow, I had to do something. As I was telling you, you can see how the melons have just gone crazy in the last few weeks. They've gone actually nuts. The tomatoes starting to have a couple of the plants die off a little bit. I need to get in here actually and trim some of the suckers off of them to help spawn longevity and better growth. You can see Miss Lucy's trying growing potatoes in a bag, and also here in a potter. A lot of this stuff we're just testing it to see which works better, growing it separate or growing it in a bed. But if you're going to do multiple raised bed box types, you're going to need extra room. Next year I will probably grow my squash and spaghetti squash outside of these boxes and put them to where I can spread them out to give them more room to grow, and see how that works. It's kind of trial and error, you know. This is the 3rd year, I believe, trying to grow gardens here in East Tennessee. We are seeing some of our first formed melons right here. These are sweet potatoes. Again, I'm trying to grow them upward because sweet potatoes, like squash and vine plants, will take up a ton of room. They grow like crazy outward. So I'm growing these upward. Sweet potatoes got hit by the varmints also a little bit ago. So we'll see how this works out. You may be able to see the bees that are all over the flowers pollinating them, which is a super sign, because I've read on East Tennessee homestead site where a lot of folks are not getting any. They're getting green growth but not vegetable growth due to lack of bees to pollinate. So gardening is fun, it's relaxing, and it can be prosperous, but it does take some patience and some trial and error at work. You know, watch what works for others in your region and learn from it. And for example, something I just learned recently is you can take milk and allow it to sour, and then set it out after it's soured, and then at room temperature you can bring it into your garden and pour it around your green bell peppers. You may be able to put it around other things. I just know specifically you can put it around green bell peppers to help them out with they like lots of calcium and not a lot of water. So again, it's something that is a lesson learned. So yeah, it would be a lot less headache to just go to the market and buy things that you may want to have. But how do you ever know? Don't assume. And I say that encouragingly, but also strongly. Don't assume that you can put seeds in the ground and they just grow. Okay, they all have personalities and a temperament to temperature, water, less water, more water, calcium. Lesson learned this year was using mushroom compost. It's a high nitrogen level, and I planted less than 30 days after putting it in dirt and mixing it. I put plants in, and I believe that's what stunted the growth of the squash initially. It burned up the turnips and the radishes. So, you know, again, it's lessons learned. So you can see I need to come out and do some work on my tomato plants. I do have lots of tomatoes hanging. And I have had a few damaged tomatoes, a single hole in them. So as they are close to being ready, I go ahead and pick them and then just lay them out on the back deck, upper back deck, to try and save them. So this is kind of an update on our 3 raised bed boxes and what we're growing and some of our lessons learned. So previously, I think it was in the Patriot Express newsletter, I mentioned how I had to cover my berry bushes to keep the birds out and so forth. So here's a closer look. I had pictures before, but here's a closer look. You can see the berry bushes. I basically took fence posts and PVC and I ran it up in height. Basically built kind of a horseshoe, placed it on the pipes, and then I pieced together the netting. I don't know if you can see it or not, but covered it, and this is bird netting, not the deer netting. So have it down through here. You can see we gotta still have a cage out, and then next year the blackberry and raspberry bush down beyond, I will have to go ahead and put some form of a cage or netting around to protect any berries. So I also mulched. I covered the ground and mulched it to try to help keep the weeds down inside as well. So I can basically just mow around it, occasionally come out and weed eat it to help it out. Fruit trees. Some lessons learned on fruit trees. This tree is five years old, and apple. And one of the lessons learned this year was that you can probably see the limbs down below that are bare. This is a norm where the deer come through and eat off the limbs. This tree was full of apples, okay? And not until this year, but in a day and a half period, all the apples disappeared. And Wilson and his family of four-legged furry critters hit both the apple trees. And what got my attention was a squirrel ran across the front yard carrying an apple in its mouth. So next year I will have to put a cone around the bottom to keep the squirrels out of the apple tree. Peach tree. Last year we had between 500 to 1,000 peaches in this tree. This year we have 0. This tree we had a late frost, a late heavy frost, and because of that we had less than 10 peaches on this tree. Another something else that was interesting on the peach tree. Typically, you can see how the leaves are green. Well, the last 2 years when this tree has peaches on it, all of the leaves start to get gold spots and they curl up like the leaves are deformed. With no peaches on it, that's not happening. So typically when there's peaches, I have to spray this tree down with neem oil about every 3 weeks to a month. So peach trees are very temperamental, as are most fruit trees. So again, it's not just plant it and let it grow and then get the fruit off of it. You got to understand, just like growing a garden, you got to understand what the fruit trees are saying to you. Here's the second apple tree that got raided by the squirrels. A lot of the leaves started to turn on this tree. I sprayed it with neem oil and it corrected the leaves, but once the squirrels raided the apples, I haven't sprayed it because the neem oil is $9 to $12 a container, so I'm using it elsewhere. Over here we have red pears. As you can see, the tree is absolutely loaded with pears. The leaves, the limbs are dangling down heavy with pears. I'll be coming out in the next week and start pulling pears off. You want to pick them about a week to 2 weeks before they're market ripened, and then store them in brown bags for about a week. So I'm hoping to make some pear sauce and also some pear jam or jelly. Have not had to use neem oil as much on this tree, on the pears. Lesson learned on the pear trees last year and the year before. I was waiting on them to grow and waiting on them to grow, and waited till like the end of the month of July. Things are a little ahead of schedule on fruit trees this year, but I came out waiting. Finally I came out here around the end of July last year and the year before, and my red pear tree was full of wasp, and they had totally taken over the fruit. So it was all lost, right? Because the pears ripen from the inside out. So all the bees were basically eating the pears from the inside out. So when I would get out here, the skin would just like cave in. So for this year, this is the most productive fruit tree that we will have. This here is a yellow pear tree, and typically it is loaded full of pears, but because again of the late heavy frost that we had, it did not bear fruit. Matter of fact, I haven't even noticed one single pear on this tree. So if it did have yellow pears, it would be the same as the red pear tree. You got to time it just right, or the wasp will take over. So that's kind of a tour of the fruit trees and some lessons that we're learning along the way. Reading, watching YouTube videos, talking to other folks that also have experience with them. So one of the things about where we have the fruit trees in the raised garden is if we need to expand garden and go to tilled gardening, we have the space here to do that, or start a community garden to bring in neighbors to help work the garden, to have vegetables to share amongst neighbors in need. So that's it. So till next time, take care. Good luck gardening, and good luck with your fruit trees. Learn what they're saying to you. Y'all be blessed and safe out there. Bravo Echo out. Thank you for checking out the Hope for Survival YouTube channel. If you are new to Hope for Survival, you can check out our books at our webpage. Book 1, which is Hope for Survival, Getting You Prepared for Disasters, and Book 2, Hope for Survival, The Mindset, are both available for order on the website. We also offer the Hope for Survival football stick, which is a memory stick set up as a digital filing cabinet with files already loaded on there for you to digitally copy items such as deeds, auto transcript for ownership, wills, living wills, loans, banking information, items that if your home burned down or you had some form of a disaster, you could have all your important papers already digitally filed on this stick. All you do is simply drag the digital file into the appropriate preset folder so that you'll have it in the event of a disaster. You have to flee your home in a hurry, or also if you're away from home and you need critical information that's personal. If you have your memory stick with you, you can put it in your computer and pull that information up wherever you may be. Again, you can find these items to order at our website, https www.hopeforsurvival.com, or you can email me at preparedness101@protonmail.com, and I will try to help you out. Again, thanks for checking out the Hope for Survival YouTube channel. Hope to see you again.